If the oven's temperature just can't really hold steady, or if it keeps changing the temperature, what would you look at for that?
That's a really, really common deal. It's just, it doesn't seem to be cooking right. So,
Hmm.
the best thing that I recommend is to find the probe we were talking about earlier that's sticking out of the oven and take your rack, and they're typically mounted near the top. And so, you would take your rack and put it on the very top option, and then buy one of those thermometers that you could leave in the oven. Typically it's the one, if you go to your grandma's house, you'll see it in her oven, kind of the circle, and it's got the dial that moves as it heats up. Get that and put it on the rack as close to the thermometer as you can. Set your oven at 350 and let it bake for an hour without opening the door. After about an hour, open the door and look and see where that gauge is at. And that's going to tell you what your average temperature is. It's going to tell you if your variance is okay. The reason that you want to do that is because basically those thermometers adjust slowly, and after an hour you're going to have basically your steady set temperature. And so you'll find, say you open it and it's at 320 instead of 350, or 380 instead of 350, then you're going to kind of know where to start. And at that point you would want to go into your owner's manual or look online to see how to access the temperature adjustment on the oven. A lot of times it's something simple. Some of the newer ones, you could just, there's a settings button on the control panel, and that's one of the options. Some of the other ones that are a little more basic, you've got to hold like bake and broil at the same time for 10 seconds. You've got to press bake, go to max temperature, hold bake for 10 seconds. It's something like that. But when you get into the temperature adjustment menu, you'll see two zeros, and that means that it's not adjusted plus or minus. You can usually adjust the temperature plus or minus 30 degrees usually. And so if you do your test after an hour, it says it's 320, you're going to want to get in your temperature adjustment and adjust it plus 30. If it says it's 380 on the temperature gauge, you'll want to do it minus 30 and then save it. Again, all that's in the manual. And a lot of times that'll fix it. It's basically just kind of recalibrating the oven.
Yeah. As a sort of frame on mind, it's the temperature adjustment that you want to increase or decrease rather than you're saying it's negative or like it's 32 low or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Adding to what it is rather than telling it how low, how much it's missing by.
Right, yeah, yeah. You're basically, it's saying, you say, hey, I've set you at 350, but you're really 320, but it thinks it's 350. So you
Yeah.
basically tell it, like, okay, here is 350. This is what's accurate by increasing or decreasing. So what can happen too with the it's not cooking right is they'll say, it comes on, it gets hot, it seems like it's working, but it takes an hour to cook, and I've got to turn it off and turn it on. So what happens in those cases is you almost always at least have a bake and a broil element. Most ovens nowadays, when you turn it on, you'll see that it's preheating. And so what happens during preheat is a lot of times it will cycle all of the elements inside, the bake, the broil, the convection, so that it can preheat faster. When your bake element is out, it doesn't know that. So it's preheating, it tries to turn the bake element on, nothing happens. It turns the broil element on, it gets hot, it turns the convection, it goes back to the bake. So you'll notice it takes a little longer to preheat, and then after that, it doesn't heat at all because the bake element doesn't get activated because you're baking and not broiling. And so if that happens, I mean, 99% of the time, it's going to be your bake element.
Okay, so it's almost always the bake, not not one of the other two.
Right, yeah, because the all the other ones are working during preheat. After preheat, you don't want the broil on if you're trying to bake, so it's just going to do the bake. And the same thing works with a gas oven. Is not so much. It doesn't so much cycle like a broil and gas, but when you have a weak igniter, what can happen is it'll come on the first time, and then after it gets a temperature and preheats, that igniter, it'll glow and try to come on, but it won't activate the gas anymore. And so that means your igniter's getting weak and you have to change it.
Okay, yeah, good to know. Is it ever common that maybe the heat has started to leak out? Like I don't know if perhaps the doors, maybe the gasket's kind of a bit damaged or something like that, and that's what could have caused the sort of the temperature change over like a longer time span, something like that.
So even if the gasket's bad, there shouldn't be enough of a temperature loss that would really affect the cooking that much, because on a really good expensive oven, a damaged gasket would still hold temperature better than a cheap oven with a good gasket. You know what I mean? But sometimes it can be concerning. You can have an issue with the gasket if you get close and you just feel a lot of heat coming out of the door. And what that can do is discolor the outside of the oven. You know, if it comes up, it could discolor the control panel, the door handle. So that would be something you would want to get fixed. And replacing a door gasket is super easy. It just pulls out and a new one just pops in. So
Nice, yeah. Probably one of the simplest replacements on the whole thing.
oh yeah,